So today, the power we are studying is sometimes it's called wisdom and sometimes it's called judgment. I think originally Charles Fillmore called it judgment, and it's kind of morphed into wisdom in some of the books. So it's either one, wisdom or judgment. One of the 12 powers, and we are using the book PowerUp by Paul Hasselbeck on the side table. One of the few things that we do ask you to pay for if you take that book, but your credit is good for us. The important thing is that you have the book and follow along with us. So Charles Fillmore conceived this idea of the 12 powers because he's always stressed practical Christianity. And he wanted people to understand that the Christ of your being is expressed through every aspect of yourself. And so the powers that are, the abilities that everybody has, that they develop as they grow older, as they grow up and older. I forget about growing older. As we grow up and as we mature, we all have abilities. But those abilities can be spiritualized. They can be infused by the Christ. So originally in his book, he had this diagram of where these 12 powers were located. And the understanding you see there is right at the third eye, just behind the forehead. And over the years, Charles Fillmore didn't do this, people just assigned colors to them. You know, if you give people a list of things, they're going to assign colors to them. The same with the chakras. You know, originally the chakras didn't have any colors. I think in California they invented the colors for the chakras. So we all have common sense consciousness. Or there's more than 5 senses, of course. There's also like the sense of balance, and there's kinesthetic senses. But when we say the 5 senses, we're talking about the information that your body gathers and sends to the brain for you to make sense of the world. But Christ consciousness is beyond that. It is your true self. So the 12 powers exist at the sense consciousness level and at the spiritual level. But the spiritual level you have to develop consciously. So today we're studying wisdom and judgment. So I have I'm not going to go into that yet. Okay, making good decisions. So you use your wisdom and judgment at the sense level all the time. And before you make a decision, before you use your judgment to evaluate the factors. If I'm going to do something, I think about the cost, either in time or effort or money, or what it will cost in terms of a relationship. Will it be good for the relationship or not good for the relationship? Is there any risk involved? The desire, how much do I want to do something or not do something? And I need information, just general facts, in order to make a good decision. Now, there are probably other things that you need to make a good decision, but this is just a kind of off-the-cuff list. So let's pretend that you've got to go to Walmart and get just 1 or 2 items, and then you have a 7 p.m. class. Or you're going to come here for meditation on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock. And so you rush into Walmart, and then you pass these vending machines, and you realize that you're really thirsty, and plus you don't want to have to go for the next 3 hours without anything to drink. And you like to have, a lot of people like to bring their own water when they go anywhere, or they bring bottled water. So here you have to make a decision. I'm rushed for time. Do I have the time to stop to do this? Is it worth the effort to go over to the machines, to fish out either the change or the credit card, whatever it requires. There's very little risk, probably, in buying a bottle of water. There's the desire. How thirsty are you? How important is it to you to be hydrated for the next 3 hours? And you're going to need some information. You have to know how to use a vending machine. Does it take coins? If it takes coins, probably only takes quarters. Do you have that? If it uses credit cards, do you know how to do that? You need some information, even no matter what little thing you're going to do, you need information. And then after you get the couple of little things you went in for, you notice that, oh, there's the lottery. And, you know, come to think of it, does Walmart even sell what lottery? I don't think they do. Well, pretend they do for the purpose of this example. So you're leaving and you remember that the lotto has gotten up to like a gazillion dollars. It's one of those big giant jackpots. And today is Wednesday, tonight they're going to pull the numbers. So you think, boy, I could stop and get one or more lottery tickets. And you think about the cost. Well, maybe a couple dollars is nothing, or maybe you just, when you play the lottery, you always play 5 tickets, that's $10. So for some people, $10 is something to think about. So, and it's going to take time. You have to fill those cards out. Will it affect your relationships? Do you have a person in your family that frowns on buying lottery tickets? And let's just suppose that you won. Then you'd have to tell that person, oh, yeah, I did buy a lottery ticket. It's almost all risk buying a lottery ticket. You know that you're probably going to lose your money. But then there's the desire. You know, there's a little adrenaline rush, a little bit of endorphin, knowing that, hey, tomorrow I could be a gazillionaire. So, and there's information. You need some information before you do any kind of gambling. You want to know, what are the odds. In the case of lottery tickets, I will give you a tip. And for some of you, this will be the only thing you remember out of the whole lesson is the lottery tip. Here it comes. Don't play a lot of numbers from 1 to 31. Because a lot of people play their birthdays. So the numbers from 1 to 31 are chosen significantly more often than numbers 32 to, 52? However high it goes. Okay. So this doesn't mean that you're more likely to win. What it means is if you win, you will not share it with as many people. And a lot of times, if you win, it's just a few bucks. But it's going to be a few more bucks if you win with the numbers towards the higher numbers. Okay, there's my big hot tip. So information. Before you make any decision, you need information. But we want to make spiritually good decisions. We want to use our Christ power of wisdom and judgment when we make any decision, whether it's just an everyday, should I do this or do that, or whether it's an issue, something that's upset you. So I'm going to, I still haven't gotten to that thing I'm going to share. I'm going to share something with you, but it's not yet. So this is where you make the shift. This is where you stop and you decide, I am going to make this decision not as a meat-eating plains ape. I am going to make this decision as a spiritual being. This decision, however small it is going to be a spiritual decision. And in order to do that, you have to stop. I read somewhere that there was a guy that his spiritual practice was that every time he had to make a decision, no matter how small, the first thing that popped into his mind, this is what I'm going to do, he would wait just a second or two. What does Spirit tell me? And very often, the second thing that came to his mind, he knew was the right thing to do. Because your knee-jerk reaction is just your personality, your little self, not your big self. So you stop and make that shift. I tell you what I do on Sunday mornings, almost every Sunday morning, is I come to a place where I can go through Claremont, take 50, or I can take kind of the back way along the lake. Two different ways to come. And my logic tells me that if I go through Claremont, it's a little bit further, but it's a faster road. And I'm going to go a little bit above the speed limit, probably, most of the time. So I want the faster road. But that might not be a good route this morning. So I always ask Spirit what I should do. Should I take the scenic route, which is shorter, or should I take the longer route, which is faster? And Spirit tells me, it's just a feeling. You have to practice it. How do you know what Spirit is guiding you to do? You just practice it. Spirit will guide you to learn how guidance feels. So, in addition to considering, after you've made the shift, you consider the cost and time, effort, money, or relationships. Is there any risk, your desire, your information? You go through that same process, but then you decide to make the decision that is loving, compassionate, and based on your guidance. You decide that. That is what the power of wisdom and understanding is about, is what you decide. Now, actually doing it takes will. That's another power, which we'll study another Sunday. But getting to the point of deciding what to do, that is your higher power of wisdom and judgment. So in the case of the bottled water, you might decide that you might go through the whole list and then decide the loving and compassionate thing is not to buy plastic bottles because they pollute. All of the other decisions, all the other factors, they say, yeah, go ahead, you've got the time, go ahead and buy a bottle of water, you need the water, blah, blah, blah. But then you get to the very last one, you might decide, no, the loving thing, the compassionate thing is to think about the planet and not buy plastic bottles. You might. I'm not telling you should. I'm just using that as an example. And the same for the lottery ticket. You might decide, after going through, you take the shift, you listen to the guidance of Spirit, you still use your brain. Your ego is not your enemy. It's your servant to help you sift through your different factors to make your decision. But then Spirit will guide you to do what is loving and compassionate and based on your guidance. So maybe you decide, okay, I'm going to stop and buy this lottery ticket, and however much money I win, I will tithe to Unity of Claremont. For instance. Or you might decide, I am prone to gamble. It's an issue for me. And just buying a lottery ticket tends to set me down on a slippery slope. And out of love for my own well-being, I am not going to do any gambling, including even just a lottery ticket, for instance. But the final decision will be based on love, compassion, and the guidance of spirit. So, one of the things that I am studying in my integral ministry course that I'm taking, they've introduced us to this wonderful book, The 21 Skills of Spiritual Intelligence, just like emotional intelligence, like your IQ, that, you know, for your test taking, they want to know what your IQ is. There's physical intelligence, knowing how to live a healthy life. And she's written a book where there's also spiritual intelligence. And the gal who wrote it, Cindy Wigglesworth, that does not sound like the name of a spiritual guidance person, does it? Sounds like she should be writing children's books. But she's a very serious and very competent writer. And she's put together a lot of, so I've given you a picture of her book, and I do recommend it, The 21 Skills of Spiritual Intelligence. And I have excerpted from her book 9 steps to shift to the higher self. When you need to make a decision, or when you're in a distressing moment and you're about to react, what should your reaction be? So she has it in 9 steps. The first step is to stop, to make the shift. The first step is the simplest, but often the hardest. In the midst of a challenging moment, can you stop? Can you insert a pause between an event that has triggered something within you and the habituated response that is bursting to get out? Someone triggers you and you just want to blurt out, give them a piece of your mind, you know, the things that you will wish you had not said, that type of situation. Step 2, so the first step is just stop, and the second step is to breathe. And she says to take 4 or 5 long, slow, deep belly breaths. Now, we've all heard, you know, stop and take a deep breath. We've heard that a million times. But that's not enough. A deep breath is not going to do the trick. You need to take 4 or 5 deep belly breaths. Now, what's a belly breath? Okay, this is not the kind of breathing you do for a photo op, you know. This is the kind of breathing where you're not thinking about how you will look if you let your belly relax. But you have to let your belly come out in order to breathe in as deeply as possible. So that's a belly breath, where you let your belly extend and make room for more air. So you get in all the air, let all the air out slowly, in slowly, out slowly, 5 times. Deep belly breaths. And then ask for help from your higher power. In her book, Cindy has gone out of her way to use faith-neutral terminology. There are people who are not comfortable with God as a word for some reason. And that's actually quite common. I know in AA they say your higher power. So whatever terminology you're comfortable with, that's what you go to, your higher self. You can call it your intuition or your inner guidance. But, or you can, another trick she says, you can envision someone that you trust and respect. And imagine that you're having a conversation with them and asking for their advice. Step number 4 is to observe yourself. Observe your body, your heart, and your mind. Your body, where are you feeling this in your body? If you're upset, now if you're deciding whether or not to buy a bottle of water, you may not, you don't do these 9 steps. These 9 steps are for more challenging situations. And you observe in your body, where do you feel? Is your face red? Do you feel the heat? Are you choked up? Are you tight in the chest? Is your stomach upset, or do you have butterflies, or are you constricted in your torso? Where are your shoulders? Are your shoulders up, or your shoulders relaxed? Where do you feel this in your body? Then you move to your emotional state. What is the name of the emotional state? Am I angry? Am I frightened? Is it stress? Or is it irritation? Or is it just sadness? Or is it guilt? Put a name to it. There's only about 5 or 6 basic emotions. Put a name to your emotion. And then your thoughts. What are you thinking? What's running through your mind? You're looking at yourself. You're being objective. Looking at yourself objectively. What is going through my mind? And then you're ready to go to the next step. Identify and embrace ego concerns. I love her approach to this. It's very healthy, I think. She says, I like to enter fully into the perspective of the ego to see what it is afraid of and what might be true before I start discounting it. I'm giving my ego a chance to speak to me as a separate voice. Ego addressing me, Cindy. This is a typical voice dialogue technique in psychology, allowing the separate voices of the self to have a conversation. I didn't know that when I began practicing this technique, but it turns out this is a powerful psychological and spiritual tool to increase self-awareness and self-development. So she calls it voice dialogue, and it creates a separation that is helpful. So we've all seen like these cartoons where the angel is on one shoulder and the devil is on the other shoulder. And you just imagine that they're talking to each other. And the angel says, water is good, you should hydrate your body. And the devil says, go ahead and buy that bottle of water. If you're late for class, who cares? If they don't like it, let them deal with it. Or who cares about the landfill full of water bottles? One more won't make any difference. So there's this dialogue going on. We all do this. So you just notice it and participate. So I thought that was a really good. She says, I'm not my ego, I have an ego. The true self is Cindy and can listen to the voice of my ego. I can then talk back to it and say, thank you, I know you are trying to defend us, and you are right to be worried about these things. You can relax now. I see what is going on and I will handle it. You can turn it over to me. You just tell your ego, calm down. Treating the ego as an ally is more important and helpful than making an enemy of it. And then she says, ask why. Why do you, the part of you that is drawing you, you know is in the wrong direction, ask why, and ask it 5 times, she says. Continuing with that general idea, she says, look deeply for root causes of ego concerns. We all have basic needs that we had as children. But as I mentioned last week, all of those needs were not met. They couldn't have been. Even if you had perfect parents, there were times when every little need that you had, either for a snack, that nobody had time to make for you, or a kind word that you needed that nobody realized you needed it. Some needs that you had were not met. There are, according to Jungian psychologists, two root fears of the ego: abandonment and death on the one hand, and overwhelm and loss of identity on the other. Once you've identified the concerns of the ego, you need to dig deep to find its roots and understand why the particular situation is so highly emotionally charged. The way to do this is to keep asking your ego self, why are you afraid of that? What is really going on? Now, this aspect of her work, while this is good, and anybody who sits down and takes the time to go through this process will benefit, the Quantum Living course really has the very best that I've ever seen. And that's why I push this course, at helping you get at the root cause of your distress and giving you ways to resolve it. But her way of resolving it, she says, is to reframe it. See it with new eyes. See it with the eyes of compassion and wisdom. The art of reframing means to simply ask yourself, what else might be going on here that I don't know? How could I see this differently? And when we interpret a situation, we're telling a story about it. We create an internal movie. There are the major and the minor characters, and we assign them motivations. We develop a primary and secondary storyline. There is a trajectory to the story. Often, it is a good versus evil story with various sub-stories of allies and enemies. You're going to realize this more when you're really upset and it just stays on your mind, and you just keep chewing on it. And everybody you talk to, you're talking about it. For some people, this goes on for months, Something happened and they keep telling it over and over. So this is the story that we make up about whatever is upsetting us. We create these stories and we believe them. In fact, we forget that we created them. We believe that what we created is just the way things are, and we believe the upset that results from these stories is an inevitable and logical outcome. We can go further and reframe the story to see it even more powerfully by answering the question, what would it take for me to do the exact same thing to somebody else that was done to me? I remember when I first started in Unity, I was sitting around in a Course in Miracles circle class, like discussion group, and the topic was forgiveness. And forgiveness is like one of the main messages of A Course in Miracles. And we were talking about total forgiveness in every situation. And one guy was kind of new, and he said, but what if, and then he related the story of the terrible thing that his ex-wife did to him. What if it's like that? So that's a perfect example of someone who, those of us in the Course, we were accustomed to reframing our, what the Course calls grievances. We're used to reframing our grievances in terms of the spiritual level, so that forgiveness is natural and applies to everything. So, of course, says there's no order of difficulties in miracles. It's just as easy to forgive somebody who cut you off in traffic as it is to forgive someone who took your life savings. Everything, it's all forgivable. And by the way, Cindy is a student of A Course in Miracles, and she's a Unity person, but she's devoted her life to translating spiritual work into language that is acceptable to everyone, regardless of their faith, background, or if they have no faith. She wants to make these processes available to them. We can go further and reframe the story to see it even more powerfully by answering the question, what would it take for me to do the exact same thing to someone else? Isn't that an interesting question? I've never asked that question, but I think it's worth going into. Step 8 is to refocus on something to be grateful for. Our higher self suspends judgment, not assigning blame, assuming, or evil intentions, or going into drama. It evaluates what is going on far more objectively and neutrally. And most importantly, the higher self can see what is good in a situation. It can see what is right with the world. Choose to see the good. Just like the song, this is the stuff that drives me crazy. I forget about the many blessings. And step 9 is to choose a spiritually intelligent response. The most important step is to choose a spiritually intelligent response, a response that does not come from your ego's survival-based reactions, but from the wisdom of your higher self. The response could be as minimal as saying, thank you, and moving on. So if somebody calls you a bitch or a bastard, just say thank you and move on. It's minimal, yes, but it will make all the difference in the world. Then she went on and she said, these 9 steps, and they're on the side table. All that I just gave you is on the side table. The 9 steps explained. But then she also gives you a shortcut. She boils all that down into 4 steps with the acronym of SOUL. S is for stop, O is for observe, U is for understand, and L is for love. And I have created little wallet cards for you with the SOUL also on the side table. And while you're there, pick up a daily word or a Unity magazine to take home and sign up to bring snacks while you're there. Sign up for the course, in the Quantum Living course while you're there. But those are waiting for you over on the side table. So the SOUL shortcut is to stop, to observe, and look at yourself, what's going on in your body, in your heart, and in your mind. Understand the other person's point of view. Isn't this a cute little graphic for seeing the other person's point of view? And then choose what is the loving thing to do in this situation. Just 4 little steps. So that is understanding and wisdom, judgment and wisdom. And next week is love. Just as we just said, choose the loving choice. Well, what is love? We're going to study love next week. And the color is pink. And we will all be in the pink next week. So our closing affirmation is guided by Spirit. I am loving and wise. Together, guided by Spirit, I am loving and wise. Amen. So be it, and so it is.